There's lots of parts to the vision. You've got to work with what you've got. You've got advertisers, you've got expectations, you've got budgets, you've got a different viewpoint in Australia. So it's a sum of so many moving parts.
Yeah. Welcome to Process the Podcast. I'm your host, Arielle Thomas, motion director, social strategist, and founder of production company Cinema Tom, now founder of gummy brand Remy Wellness. This episode is powered by Remy. Take one of them, removes brain fog, allows you to focus. Take two of them, you're good for a workout. I have created them for you guys so that we can all get the most out of our days and live a really fulfilled life. Process is your home for creativity. I speak with some of Australia and the world's most creative minds all about their unique creative process. This podcast was recorded on Aboriginal land, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. As a baby podcast, we are still just doing this on our own, me and my team. So if you love it, please use your voice and leave us a review, share it on socials, send it to a friend, or just subscribe to the channel. We need all the love that we can get. Let's dive in. I'm so excited to chat today. So we met in the halls of the Lyle, I think, or maybe even at Mum and Dad's house when they used to throw those parties.
Those wonderful parties.
Yeah.
You have a bar in your house. It's quite amazing, isn't it?
Now that I'm an adult, I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually a really big deal.
Big deal for the 70s.
So
they were quite the fixture in the 70s.
Yes.
Yeah, like to have that very posh bar.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Nobody drinks there anymore.
No.
They just don't really entertain, I think, the changing of the times and everything.
Your parties kind of tend to dwindle a bit as
well, Mum and Dad also don't trust the liquor that's in the bar anymore because they never have really done like a full restock. But Aaron and I my older brother used to replace everything with water. Yeah, so Mum and Dad would have people over and then they'd go to pour someone pretty important a drink and they'd be like, you little fuck. Like, and I didn't really realise like the weight of what a thing that is to do.
Yes, because they're very important hoteliers, so it's not really they're on brand.
I'm like, so sorry, my kids.
It happened to me in a hotel in Turkey. Somebody had taken everything out of the minibar and replaced it with water. So a friend came over for a drink and we were like, this is not vodka, this is water. And had done very intricate seals so that you couldn't tell.
Oh my God.
I mean, yeah.
So you were at Vogue at the time and I was a rugrat. I think I was like 12, 13 when you were running around.
Probably. Well, I was down in Melbourne a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Lyle was our second home.
Yes.
Vogue second home because I had to go down to Melbourne often for racing. There was a lot of advertising and things that were, appointments that were put in around that. And then we had a lot of advertisers down there as well. So, yeah, it was funny because my memories of going to Melbourne for over 20 years was always going down there and getting beaten up by advertisers. I was in trouble for something. And it was only after I left Vogue that I started to go down to Melbourne and really enjoy myself because I didn't have any, I didn't have any pressure or stakeholders that wanted to chat to me about something.
I just remember you and Grant Pierce just being so cheeky.
Yeah, we were cheeky. We had a lot of fun down there.
Yeah. Because your demeanour would naturally, I think, because of the position that you held, obviously, as editor, was very sort of like, oh, you can't talk to her. But then I would just look over and you and Grant Pierce were just an absolute raucous, just laughing the whole time. And I was like, oh my God, they're so lovely.
He was a great publisher and, he was, he upped the fun factor and part of our shtick was we really used to entertain clients. And, the best of the best and that whole kind of philosophy, of the right restaurants and, all that sort of stuff that kind of budgets have killed all that now. But that was sort of old style marketing, I guess.
Yeah. Relationship building and courting people. So I have so much that I want to talk to you about, but what was your journey before Vogue? How did you find yourself there?
My journey was just, I'd had various sort of office jobs and things like that just after I left school and just travelled the world because I just wanted to get out. I'd grown up in the Shire and found that very stifling and I just wanted out. I wanted to go to England and there was that sort of, it had come out of punk and into new romantic period and I wanted to just go over and see all that and see the fashion in the streets and all that sort of stuff. And then I was working, I'd come back and I was working in a bookstore and writing on the side, sort of sending articles to various independent newspapers and things like that. And then I saw the job as the receptionist of Vogue, and I thought, wouldn't that be a great way potentially to get in the door?
Yeah.
Because, that is a world that completely interests me, and I'd read every book on everything fashion and pop culture and what have you. I think I'd read the entire book. It was the Pocket and Technical Bookstore. And, and so I went for the job as receptionist when I was 23.
Wow.
And I got the job, And then I stayed there for another 27 years.
Wow.
Yes.
So you never strayed? You just went straight up the ladder?
Pretty much, yeah. I strayed. I went and lived in Paris for a while as a foreign correspondent in the 90s.
Wow.
I still worked for Vogue. And then I went to Harper's Bazaar for a brief period.
Yeah.
As I went over there as deputy and then ended up coming back to Vogue as editor. But, pretty much,
Whoa.
Not a completely finite path, but, almost 3 decades there.
So when you start as the editor, I feel like everybody would want their era of being the editor.
Yeah.
What was your mark that you wanted to stamp on it?
Yeah.
Is it like that?
Well, I think you define it, but the magazine wasn't doing very well when I took it over, and there were a lot of holes to fill in terms of circ and all that sort of stuff. But
What's
first circulation and advertising revenue and there was a lot of stuff that needed to be fixed to make it a profitable and magazine. But the first thing that I had to do was get the staff right because you can't have a vision on your own, in something like that because it's such a sum of parts.
Yeah.
And so, as awful as it was having to go into a place and actually get rid of staff, I had to make sure that the right person was in the right seat as part of the strategic vision. So it's not a solo vision, and it's not even a vision until you get all the right people in the room and you're having your Monday morning production meeting and you're like, now we're on track. And you're also simpatico with your CEO, hopefully, and your publisher, and you've got to get all the ducks in a row. It's not I'm coming in here and I've got this, massive view, but all I knew is that I needed to clean it up. Immediately.
Was it easy that you came across from Harper's because it wasn't that personal? You weren't firing the person that you potentially had been sitting next to for the past year?
I suppose so, yes.
Yeah.
They weren't my appointees. Yeah. It wasn't like,
otherwise you're like, sorry, you're out.
Yeah, that and it's not, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to fight people, even if they're not your appointments. And it's really horrible. If you ever got used to it, you'd be a pretty awful human being, I think. It's a horrible thing to do, but you have to put the vision of the company first.
Yeah.
So that was essentially what I had to do for that whole first week. And then you can start to build what you've built your creative team.
Yeah.
And then you've got to then your vision comes from that.
What was the vision?
Well, the first vision was just to make sure that it was a standard of a Vogue, because in my opinion, it wasn't looking up to scratch. It wasn't there.
Right.
So it was to raise the profile of the magazine back to, being an incredibly glamorous and sort of, forward, leader in the market.
Yeah.
The top in the taste level and, all of that. But the vision, there's lots of parts to the vision because it's not, as I say, you don't just walk in and go, I think I'd like to produce my own version of Italian Vogue, because that might not be right for the market.
No. Yeah.
And you've got to work with what you've got. You've got advertisers, you've got expectations, you've got budgets, you've got a different viewpoint in Australia of how the reader, they're not exactly the same reader in Australia as they are everywhere else in the world. They're a niche. They're a different, cultures and different countries and cities and what have you. So it's a sum of so many moving parts, and the vision. One is set down by management, that you vision that you need to be profitable.
KPIs.
You've got your KPIs. You need to be profitable. You've got to have, smaller less staff turnover, more advertisers, all that sort of stuff.
And yours was just better, world class.
Yeah, to make it world class, to raise the profile of Australian Vogue overseas as well, to make sure that we were getting the invitations, the photographers, to have the cachet over there as well. Not that it was just this strange Australian product that, didn't fit into the Condé Nast stable. It was very important for me that to raise it to try and raise it to the standards of all the other international Vogues, to put it at that standard, while keeping a kind of local attitude and personality about it. And I think the other thing, and then I think it also really people forget about all the time, because is to connect back with the reader.
Yeah.
Because there's so many stakeholders involved in something like this. So you've got advertisers, you've got management, you've got every single person in the industry who thinks they could do a better job. It's all of that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what does the reader think? And is he or she going to buy it? And are they going to buy it regularly? And, you have to create that connection. And I think that connection had been broken with, that we was losing Cirque and what have you. And we had to reestablish that we were there, as a benefit to them.
Yeah.
Something that they would love, that they wanted, needed in their life.
Was it scary being the editor of Vogue? Feel like the day before you stepped into that role, or like the morning of your first day, were you like, God.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I did think, when I got it, I was like, oh wow, I'm the editor of Vogue, gosh. But the thing is, I had been there for 13 years, and I had started on reception, so I didn't think I couldn't do it.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't think I was going to absolutely ace everything, but I knew that I knew the nuts and bolts of it. And I think I didn't have the hubris to walk in and go, this is so simple, this is simple, I can do this. This is the job I've always wanted. Not at all. It was like, I know how to do it. I know what the accounts department's going to say. I know if you're late with production. Okay. I know that L'Oreal are a pain to deal with, all that sort of stuff. I knew it. And I wasn't overwhelmed by it, although it can be an overwhelming job. But I just knew the nuts. If you know the nuts and bolts, then you can kind of, the cream comes later. Yeah.
It's just a job.
Yeah. You don't really feel the weight of it till you leave, and then you realise that you had all that expectation on you, and you have to build quite a tough skin. You have to have very tough skin. And it's after you leave that you're like, I can start to shed this. I'm a person, and who am I? And because you're so representative of a brand, and the brand is such a challenging brand to people. It's challenging before you even walk in the room.
Challenging because of the history of Vogue?
Yeah, they're just expecting, there's a level of expectation, whether it's the right expectation or not, that they have of you before you enter.
How did you manage your time back then? Flying like all over the place, being super glam, changing all the things.
It was fine. I mean, I had, the day, so if I was there, started in 99, I got the editorship, but I started in the mid-80s. But 99, I got the editorship, and I left in 2012. And we were very well staffed. So I had 19 direct reports, I think, just in the editorial team. I had a full-time PA. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's unheard of now. And we didn't have digital, by the way, at the beginning. We did. Digital started in 2000. It really didn't really ramp up, for another 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. It's a very well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I had a publisher. I had a lot of backup. So I had a great, I had a series of managing directors, but I had a couple of really great ones, a couple of not so great. But, I was well supported. So time management was okay. I mean, if I traveled a lot, but I found that, I love travel. And I would just switch off on the plane. I didn't work on the plane. I would watch a movie or stare out the window and that was just my space.
Yeah, a bit of me time.
And actually probably my most creative time, where I would people weren't at me all the time, including my family. So you could just have 24 hours where you were like, right, what should we do for the March issue? Or, what should I do? What's an idea? That would often come to me traveling.
Were you the one that set the themes?
You know what sets the themes in a Vogue magazine is the fashion. So, it really does. You come back from the shows and your fashion director would say to you, okay, Prada, that was it. I had wonderful fashion directors, and they're the essence of the magazine. And they can pinpoint, that's the exit from Prada, that's the shoe from Bottega Veneta, that's the thing. And once you've isolated what defined that season, you build your fashion stories around that. And then the location will come from that, the way you photograph things. So it could be, it's about Miu Miu mini, pleated skirts and schoolgirl looks, or it's boho Chloe, or it's, and once you start to build that, then you start to see the theme of them. You start to put on the wall, you put it on the wall, and then the theme, you're going, I see where this is going. And then you plug everything in around that.
Yeah.
And then of course there's sort of overriding cultural conversations that are happening, whether it's, in the health space or in a political space or whatever that might look like. But essentially it's based around fashion and the runways. Yeah. I don't think they realize how connected it is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The catwalks are still really important. Runways are really important. And although, people like, oh, it looks so silly and all the, the tricks and the stuff sometimes that happens at the shows, and normal people are like, what is that? And I put myself in that normal people category because I'd often look at Naomi and go, what was that? But she would be looking at the what she was going to shoot. It was a really different viewpoint. So, but then I'd set big themes, so I would be thinking, okay, I need a hook. And I'd be like, let's do a guest editorship like we did with Karl Lagerfeld, or let's do, let's try and get the first interview with Kylie Minogue, after when she had her breast cancer. Let's, whatever let's go and do a whatever, something really special somewhere. I would probably theme them more. I didn't like particularly themed issues. Like I never did things like the sports issue or the bikini issue, because I think one of my sort of central philosophies was that I wanted something in the magazine for everyone. So I was quite a commercial editor, a very commercial editor. So I did want people to find one story in there that like they connected with, rather than going too hardcore. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you end up getting Karl Lagerfeld to guest edit? How was that?
Amazing.
When a guest edit happens and you're the editor, do you step back or are you hand-holding?
With him I did, yeah. It was just, he sort of loosely, it was very hard to get him because he didn't use email. He sent very long faxes that he wrote. We still have fax machines in handwriting. And then and he'd phone me late at night. So it'd be like midnight our time for me to talk to him. But he did a loose sort of, I had a Paris editor on the ground, my friend Charla, who was up sort of Paris stringer, and she would be the conduit. But then he'd say, I'm going to do something on Kylie in my house. I'm going to do Nicole as, he shot her in couture. He wanted Kate Blanchett to play Chanel. So he did every single page. Would be like, what's the fragrance page? And he'd say, oh, this. So he did. It was quite stressful for the whole staff, but we gave ourselves 2 months as a lead up time, as opposed to just 4 weeks, maybe more than 2 months, because of the lag time of the communication. But he did every page. Yeah, he did.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Is that a highlight?
Oh, for sure. Because I got to. I look at that issue now and it stands up. It was kind of quirky. It was really weird because he didn't know Australia. He never made it to Australia. He was going to come out for the opening or for the launch.
Yeah.
And then he cancelled last. He sent Hedi Slimane out, and Hedi Slimane turns up in my office, and I'm like, okay, hi, just surprised the whole team. And Karl, I think Karl, it was just such a long journey for him, and I guess he was, getting on a bit at that point. But it holds up some of the stuff some of the stuff's amazing that's in there. Yeah. That was definitely a high point. And it was really good for Australia, for Karl Lagerfeld to do Australian Vogue.
Yeah.
Was quite a coup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you learn from him? Does anything come to mind?
Oh, I think what I learned from him, he actually had a really good sense of humour, and he, as weirdly, even though he lived in that incredibly rarefied world, I remember once that I was at Paris, and he said I turned up for something with him, a shoot, and he said, "Where's Charlotte?" And I said, "Oh, she couldn't come. That was our Paris editor." And I said, "She couldn't come today. She's got an ad job she had to do." And he goes, "Yeah, I get that. You got to pay the rent." Like he wasn't, "Where's Charlotte?" He was like, "Yeah, I get that." Sure.
Oh, I love you.
Yeah. He he was kind of quite down to earth, and he just understood that we were all working people and that we had to get this thing out the door. And you watched him. He did so much. He was so busy right up, until he passed.
Yeah.
That you got to look at somebody like that. That creativity just keeps coming because he just keeps going.
Yeah.
And works till 3:00 in the morning on Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi he drank, and would just have a finger in every pie. Like his energy level was incredible. Yeah, so I learned a lot from him. Well, I admired his energy level.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and he wasn't pretentious at all.
Wow. I love hearing that. It's so nice because I feel like your world is so far away. Even when you read the little anecdotes and stuff around the press that you got for your book after your exit, it's like they love to amp up the places you were invited to and the things that you did, and even the way and Hetty showed up. What?
Yes, but you know what? I look back at that now, and I'm so glad we didn't have social media there then.
Really?
Yeah, I would have found that. I find it really onerous now, to be honest, of that sort of capturing your every moment, and it can look really show-offy.
Yeah,
and I know now it's part of your brand to do that. You have to do that. But I find it, I'm just glad that I got to keep all of that to myself.
Yeah, would you have had to
Oh, you would have had to shed every single minute of that. I had to. Would have been Q&A with Karl behind the scenes. I mean, okay, maybe it was because
very unintimate.
Maybe that seems a bit selfish because I got the interactions, but I was playing them out for the reader in the magazine.
Yeah,
and I never joined to be the front of the camera. I hated it. I'd see the red carpet, all those walls. And I'd be like, I go behind a pot plant. I hate that. And the PR will pull you out. And you have to, the editor of Vogue, it's like, because I started as a journo and I like to be behind the scenes. I hate being at the front. Whereas there's a lot of people who want those jobs because they want to be at the front.
Yeah.
So social media has changed everything about why you want the job.
Yeah, it's interesting even now having a podcast, how much of it is well, if I just did a TikTok a day, I'm sure it would blow up faster. But it's very disingenuous for me to do that because it's about you guys and the conversations I'm having with you, and then it's about the audience. It's I'm the vessel, I'm not the star. So it feels weird.
100%. And I mean, you see it with, say, I've noticed it in some cafes that have opened up with me near me recently. If they're good at TikTok, they've got tons and tons of patrons, customers. And it doesn't seem fair. Because the food, it just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, it's like a secret weapon.
Yeah,
you're good at it.
So good at social media, so good at it with the editing and the splicing and the music and all that sort of stuff. A lot of it's smoke and mirrors.
When you think about your editing style, were you much more visual or were you wordy? What did you tackle more? Did you sink your teeth into the visual side of things and the shoots, or did you sink your teeth into the words?
Well, I am a wordsmith, so words, of course. But the best part, the sweet spot is when the image and the words absolutely match,
right?
And you know it when you see it. I mean, I visually, I could, when you have a page of blue thing, things that are, say that they're inspired by Saint-Tropez. I love that where you look. Which one of these is not making sense, because it's a magazine, putting a magazine together is like a puzzle. And you'd be like, it would stick out so obviously, and then you'd be like, that heading is not quite right. And then when you can, honed it to make sure that the heading or the intro pull out or whatever absolutely match the image, then you're on a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have to... a magazine has a flow. It has a natural flow. You create the flow. So the words and the visuals, you need space to rest. You need time. You need long blocks of copy. You need short grabs.
There's also it's like a recipe, isn't it? There's there's different parts of it, right?
The front of the book, and where you have all what you call the turns that are all busier and, more buzzy and what have you. And then those beautiful spreads where you hopefully have gone on location and you've had some time to explore this.
There's something called a well or
something? The well, that's the main well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got the back of book where you would put...
And there's travel and beauty.
Yeah. And then you split them into sections because, you can throw that medium up if you like, but we're still human and we do read in a particular way.
Yeah.
And we need... they used to call it, you get on the roller coaster. You got to get them on the roller coaster fast. So you do need all that like busyness at the front, but then give space to breathe in sort of various
that makes
sections.
A lot of sense.
Yeah,
it's the same in storytelling and video too.
Yeah,
if you think about a film,
it's
like
all
even
about
an action film,
editing. It's about what's superfluous. What you need less of, what do you need more of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're still a wordsmith. Would you miss the visual part of that?
No, because I still get that. I'm working at Bell now as a luxury editor at Bell at the moment, and do a bit of house and garden as well. And I put visuals into my words and stories that I do in that. So that's kind of fun. Although when I started, I had to pull in all these images. I was like, I used to have staff for that. But I do it now myself, and it's actually really fun to sort of pull those together, But of course, when I'm writing books, then visuals are irrelevant. But so I still play in both areas.
After your exit, and I don't think we need to give too much weight to it at all, you basically had to reimagine what was next.
Yeah, I did.
And you did it really fast.
I did it really fast. Well, I was lucky because, it was a very abrupt exit. And I remember it was the next day, and after I was sort of told to leave, and I was at a friend's house, and I got a phone call from Louise Adler at Melbourne University Press, and she said, "Do you want to have a coffee?" And she just offered me a book deal. We had a coffee the next afternoon. She offered me a book deal to write my story book. What a great thing in this sort of, because I was still a bit sort of shell-shocked.
It was like a lighthouse.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, wow. And I went to Paris just to clear my head and get away from
as one does.
Well, because there's a little crap going on, the media shit going on there. I'm like, I'm just going and I'll have a little think and a thought for 2 weeks. And it was just very strange for me to wake up and not, go into the office and see my team and whatever. It was really odd. But then after 2 weeks, I was like, okay. And I started my book, The Vogue Factor, in the departure lounge in BA, British Airways departure lounge in Heathrow. And from the first page, I went, oh, this is fun, because I had not been writing that much as the editor. You're not. You end up doing the business and HR side of things. And you're not doing the creative work anymore. And I wrote the first page. I was like, oh, this is fun. And and that it was, I guess, and then then that was part of a journey to go, okay, so right, who am I again if I'm not working at Vogue? Like, who am I? And that was part of that process to go, what do I like to do? What music do I like to listen to? What clothes would I wear if I don't have to go?
Yeah. How long did that take you, do you think, to really realize who you were?
A couple of, some of it was quick. Oh, no, it's pretty quick, to be honest. Yeah. And
that's like a whole reimagining of the self.
It's a reimagining of yourself, and it's also a rejection of corporate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was part of it too, because, part of me was like, well, I guess I need to go and get another big job. I need to go and get another corporate job. And I need to be, and you get all this, and all the advice you don't want, like, get back in the chair after 90 days. And I'm like, who said? Who? Like, somebody wrote some dumb book, some life coach said that. Like, and as it turns out, I never did get back in it, because I didn't want to rejoin an corporate world that was so dismissive of people that, had been there for such a long. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. And then so I was like, well, what creative powers do I have? What am I good at? And for a little while, I thought nothing, because I had so many staff. I'm like, well, I'm just good at having staff.
Managing people,
and I am pretty good at that. But then I was like, no, actually, I can write. And once I did that, it was fine.
Did you have imposter syndrome about you writing and being the writer again?
No. If I was writing about something I didn't know about.
Yeah, it's your life. So
but that was my life story. Then I got a 3-book deal, and then they were like, and I was like, I want to write a book about young people going into the industry, because I always think they had the wrong idea about what the industry. So I stuck to my knitting, I did a little novella where I was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but it was a bit rushed. But I'll attempt that again. But it was just a little bit rushed. But no, I stayed to what I knew, which I didn't reinvent. I just did it my way.
Yeah.
And I got rid of all the corporate politics because I think, particularly as you get older, that's a terrible stress to have in your life.
Yeah.
You can handle it when you're 40. You can handle it when you're 35. Yeah, if you have to. But we have to. But it's not a stress that I think is something I wanted to have in, the next chapter.
End to end, how long did the book take from start to finish?
7 months, 8 months.
Was that like a wild ride of rediscovery and like reflection?
Yeah, a little bit. It was very cathartic, obviously. But I've structured it so I wrote every day for about 5 hours and not on the weekends. And I did structure it because I was going into an office because it was such an abrupt break from Vogue. I needed to have that structure. But it was really easy because it wasn't chronological. I did it in sections. Like I did some around the Princess Mary interview and I did some around the Karl Lagerfeld piece and then I did something around models and being thin. And so I loved it actually. It's really fun to write. And I had been legaled, by a News Corp, so I had to be careful about what I wrote.
With NDAs and stuff.
Yeah. But I had to be careful of that. Yeah. So the only way you could really approach that is to do that through a novel and, changing. Yeah.
Because and I guess through that time you would have had a lot of people being like, oh, honey, like, and that. But then ultimately you're also just trying to be this super creative vessel.
That horrible, because what are you going to do next? Or what are you, like, it's a terrible thing to ask someone straight away. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, like, as you've just said very sensitively, you've got to find yourself and who you are, and you've changed.
Yeah.
You've changed from when I started at 23 to how I came out the end. You're not the same. You're a different.
Yeah.
Well, no, you probably, hopefully, your soul is intact, but you've changed, and you've got to you do have to discover what makes you happy, because ultimately, I loved working at Vogue. So the next role, you had to be happy, not just vengeful or desperate, or it was really important to me to be happy after that. Yeah. That was like my guiding goal. I was like, I'm never going to do anything I don't want to do.
Wow.
Still my guiding goal. Yeah.
The redefining piece is so interesting. I think I've only really come into the podcast since February last year. I decided to go all in, because until then it was sort of just this like, oh, okay, I'll email that person and see. Like there was never any consistency really. It was just much more of a hobby. And then I went through this whole process of releasing the Lyle and being mum and dad's daughter and being, oh my God, your parents are Rowena and Peter. Oh my God, I've been to your house. Like everyone was sort of, I lived in that world so intensely. And of course it opened up doors. Like I started my fashion film career at Scanlan and then moved on, and so many contacts and stuff came from that. Even I think I've shot so much stuff for Vogue now in the video space. I think that actually came from just the familiarity, because you can lean on that so much to get ahead.
Yeah, of course.
But I think I've totally stepped into my own and am willing to go all in, because they've closed that chapter, which is so weird in itself that kind of needed to happen for me in order to do that.
That life and your careers are a really long timeline. Yeah. But it's interesting how family slots in around that. Yeah. Because I remember when I went home and said to my sons the day that I was sort of dismissed from Vogue, and I was like, well, boys, I always remember Joey was coming down the stairs. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm out, blah, blah. And he looked at me and he was like, oh, it's okay, Mum. I reckon this family needs a change. I thought, what a grown-up thing to say.
Oh, wow. Joey, love that.
I think my head was spinning around in my neck, and I'm like, really? That must be great for you. Who's going to pay the bills? But part of me also was like, you're right. We actually do, And I did take with me from that. I didn't walk out with my tail between my legs or anything like that. I was like, it was all very abrupt and badly managed. But I was just like, I was really focused on, I know the one thing that really held me together is I thought you had an idea every 10 seconds for Vogue. You had to. You can have an idea every 10 seconds for yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that actually found that really comforting, because I'm like, you're never going to run out of ideas.
Yeah, wow.
Because you did them at Vogue, and you had to. There were so many obstacles that you had to get around to, creatively or not, but with yourself, there aren't any.
Yeah, wow. So you wrote the book and then
Then I got a 3-book deal. So
you had a lot of writing to
do. I did 3 books in 2 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you work with other media mastheads until then? Like you were in?
No, I
just
didn't.
writing?
No, I don't think I did. And then I got a weekly column in the New Daily, which was really nice. And I did that for about 6 or 7 years, where I could just write whatever I wanted on Sundays. And that I got a really nice following from that. And then from my book. So I knew I have my own audience. I know who she is. Like, yeah, she comes up to me in the supermarket and, like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah. Like I have my own audience that were with me at Vogue, but then followed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
So they're nice. They're nice people. They're nice humans. And they're not necessarily the fashion industry. They're women that are, interested in fashion and smart and, and full of doubt and want some guidance and don't take, like, they're a really, really, really lovely group.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Love that for you.
It's much happier. They come to your book launches and everything. They're adorable.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
So a freelancer life now.
And it's worked out okay, like you throw yourself out there, like, you've got to like open up to the world of abundance. But, I've got a board directorship. I lecture at college. I do speaking gigs. I write opinion pieces. I've got, magazine work. So I've done tons of different things. So it comes, I can MC stuff. I do lots of different things. And even I was redoing my website. I do a lot of mentoring, not all paid. And again, I never, even if something drops off and something comes in the door and something, I always think that if it all came down to nothing, I could still come up with an idea. I don't think I'll ever run out of ideas. I don't think so.
Do you think that that's like the creativity is like that thing, right, where the more you do it, the more it gives back to you?
Yes, I think the more you do things that it's consistency and you just get into a flow.
Yeah.
You can also give yourself breaks. We don't have to be creative all the time.
Yeah.
Like we can be really just be, which I think is really important.
My biggest problem at the moment is monetizing my creativity.
100%.
And every fucking idea I have, I'm like, that'll be a business. That's a great business.
No,
shut up.
And I'm like, no, don't. Because I feel for this generation as well, because you have to be really entrepreneurial. You and I have had this discussion before. Those really big legacy type, there's hardly any of them left. They've hardly got any staff. There's not your big things in my day that you could join Condé Nast or Fairfax or everything's fallen over and people are and they're, being run by interns or 2 people so people with good ideas. Not only do you have to be entrepreneurial, but you have the entire world on your fingertips and you can get very easily discouraged because you look and you go, it's been done. Someone's doing it in Poland or, Jakarta or Auckland. You can see, that we have, my time was a more naive time.
Oh, yeah.
And in the naivety, I think it was easier in a funny way.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard now for when young people are starting out and everything looks like it's been done and they have to find their niche, I think that's hard. I do.
And then there's also so much sameness as well. Like everybody's pinching each other's ideas and editing in this way.
That's true.
And then that Australian fashion conversation of how a lot of Australian fashion looks the same right now.
Yeah. But then, so do a lot of influencers.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's that whole tip of the iceberg thing that we all keep getting fed the same tip of the iceberg. And when all that massive knowledge is actually down underneath here that people aren't seeing.
You actually said that. I think you were at a talk with Mega Kapoor from Imprint, but I don't think she's at Imprint. Is Imprint still exist?
It's had a hiatus, but it may be back because she went off to edit Vogue India and now she's back again. So that might have another rise because it's fabulous.
Yeah. You mentioned on that panel, this was 5 years ago maybe, and you said, and it stuck with me, that it's a shame with social media at the moment because creatives don't necessarily know what they're referencing and how it's like, great, you could be referencing that shoot that happened 2 years ago from Calvin Klein, but you're not necessarily referencing that that's actually Robert Mapplethorpe, and that's in that era is like that, and he held that flower in his mouth because of this, and you have no idea about.
If you keep digging.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what some students were talking about. We were talking about low-slung jeans, and they were talking. Their reference finished at Y2K. I'm like, have you heard of the 70s?
Yeah.
But I don't want to damn them because there's so much more information. I mean, look at what we're dealing with now, where we just politically look at what we're dealing with. There's just stuff being sent out from the White House, everywhere. On Twitter, on X.
Yeah.
It is so difficult to find that space to just sit down and go, that 10,000 hours, which I still agree with.
Yeah.
To find that 10,000 hours probably relates back to you embracing your podcast with two hands. It's like you put in the time you to be the expert, because all that pinching and stealing, people can see that.
Yeah.
People know, it's authenticity and the actual the hours spent doing something and really deep diving into something and knowing it is very obvious in a person.
Yeah.
I think.
How do you work with your creativity now? Like when you are to be creative, do you have like a routine or how do you let new creativity in, for example?
Really good question. It's a funny thing. I've got an idea for a novel. I've written 2 chapters of it, and I've been stalling on it because I, like everybody else, all those thoughts come into your head. Why? Why do you need to do this?
Yeah.
You're too old. It's who needs it? Does the world need another book? Why do you think you're? And so all of those things come into play. And so I've put it aside. But sometimes in me, and it's been like that since I was little, you can feel something start to build. It's in you. You can feel it wanting to come out. Like it's I don't even know how to describe it particularly well. So I get my paid work out of the way. I do that. And then I'm like, I can feel this thing that wants to come out. So I have to try and tap in and channel that. I think I should just do it. And I think I should do it even if the world doesn't need it.
Yeah.
Maybe I need it. Maybe I need to.
Yeah.
So, because I was talking to a friend who was really an author, very respected author, and I was babbling on one night, and I said, I've got this book idea, but I don't know if I should do it because it's not like chick lit, but it's wrong. I'm not sure about
chick-lit.
But I was going on, well, what's wrong with chick lit anyway? It's quite derogatory. But I'm going, and I was like, I don't know if I should do that or I should, because my audience likes this. So I'm just babbling.
Yeah.
And she's like, can I give you a piece of advice? I was like, oh, please do. And she's like, write the book you want to write. I'm like, oh,
shocking.
Yeah,
wow.
Fantastic piece of advice.
What is the book that you want to write?
I think I have to start writing it.
And then it will just make itself known.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so that's a really good piece of advice.
Do you have to
rather than pandering to an audience or believing there's an audience there that isn't? Or, people do that a lot.
Yeah, being too over-analytical.
Well, people create audiences in their heads that actually aren't there.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fashion design, in restaurateurs, they make a product they want to make, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But how do you overcome that if you are going to do the book that you want to do?
You just got to do it. You just got to do it and evaluate it.
Figure it out.
Yeah. It's like work. I couldn't sit around and think, is there a need for a March issue? Which there probably wasn't. You just have to get it out. And then you can have a look at it at the end and go, okay, how do we make this the best possible product?
But then you have an editor with you, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a book editor? Or as an editor, do you more edit your own work?
Yeah. Mine's pretty clean when I send it through. And then you get your line editing where it's like, they might try and expand. But I'm not a first-time writer, so I think I'm pretty good at self-editing. But they're very valuable line editors because they do ask you to explain things in a different way and you're kind of like, oh, don't you get it? And then you realise that they actually have a point.
Yeah.
Line editors are really important. Yeah. But I'm pretty good at self-editing before I get to that spot. Yeah.
If you could go back and tell yourself one thing about creative reinvention when you were in that crux of your life of knowing that you had something in the review. Like, for example, even me having the hotel and that life in the review and the reinvention of that. I mean, I find reinvention very exciting.
Yeah.
And I see so much positivity in that because you just never know what thought will come out.
Yeah. What I would say about that is back to where we were talking before is get societal expectations off it, get the industry expectations off it, take the gossip out of it. Don't let those people come up and say you've got 90 days to get back into the chair. You don't. Who said so? Like, that's stupid. Like, how many life coaches are there on LinkedIn? Like what? Reinvention is about listening to yourself, listening to what makes you happy. And it's not even that thing of getting you do. Yes, you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to. I think you do have to do a lot of listening. Actually, I think there's a lot of it. Is about getting different points of view, talking to younger people. Because I'm older, a lot older. Is talking to younger people, and how the world's changed and your place in it. I think that's really important. Part of that is to that you're not a sage as such. You've got some wisdom that you've taken with you, but you have to stay connected with the conversations. And that's a very good way to do it when you're not in corporate. Because corporate is like so much of it is just keeping your head down.
Yeah, it's not very pure, is it?
Well, it's not very creative.
No,
I mean it's not. You can use creativity in the corporate world for sure in terms of managing staff and strategies and goals. There is some creative thinking involved in that, but the
commerciality doesn't really allow for much creativity.
No, and we seem to be becoming less empathetic. Just as humans, it's like the real nastiness that we've seen that the leading. If you look at America and the rhetoric now and the way that people speak, and there is a real deterioration of that being kind and being human. There is.
Yeah, there's a bit missing. When we think about your through line, I think I went to acting school, which I think you knew, and I was analysing why I went there. The nature of my childhood was these kind of events and things popping up and family things and blah, blah, blah. And like life would happen to me with breakups when I was a teenager and all that. But at the end of the day, if mum and dad hadn't finished work, I would go into a hotel room alone. So much of what I would digest and stuff. And the reason I wanted to go to acting school was because when people go to the theatre, they're essentially putting something on and people attend so that they feel less alone. I've done everything that I do now to make sure that people feel less alone. Even in the podcast world, I'm so blatantly authentic, like that I only learned how to do my proper cash flow like 6 years into business, and I was just making it up as I go from then. And this whole kind of operation of why I'm doing what I'm doing really comes down to that. I think that with technology and especially my resources of audio and camera and all of that now is really, I can help a lot of creatives feel much less alone because of what I've been through, how I'm building my business, all the things, and I can amplify that. And I know that the community can see it and feel it because they're like, oh my God, I needed to hear that right when you said it. Do you think that there's been a through line in your career or maybe your post-Vogue writing even that you're getting out for people, like what it is, that little nugget?
Potentially the through line is writing and I mean, I remember like at school, I don't know if you had the same thing when the teacher would say, oh, you're going to write an essay today, and I would just get that bubble of excitement, like it would just like
I did not get that.
Oh my God, I was like, just like, oh, give me that book with the staples that I get. Whereas if they were like, it's a maths test, so it was that excitement about, a blank page and writing something. And I still get that. And I still got that at the beginning of sitting down at, a production meeting of every Vogue magazine and there's a blank wall. And I'd be like, oof, like, how am I going to fill that? Like that is a through. Like you give me a blank page and I'm just like, how do you feel it? And I guess at the end of that, I just like to have, I don't want to use the word communication because it's so overdone. I like to have conversations, and I'm a very conversational writer as well. I'm not an academic writer, and I'm certainly not an obscure writer. Or even, I'm not going to win a Booker Prize anytime soon. I can let you know that much. But you
haven't written it yet. Okay.
I don't know, but
You're 2 chapters.
They're a type, and they're a good type. I can't do them, but I can have a conversation. I can connect, through words with a reader, and that I find that incredibly enjoyable. And, and as I say, I've got an audience through that. So my through line is that point of connection, is that I like to just talk.
You just connect with them.
Yeah, I'm a big talker, I guess. I can also listen, but and that was sort of taken away from me at Vogue. Like, not taken away from it, it's you don't do it because you're too busy doing other stuff.
Well, you manage people. You're not the creative, right?
Not really. But what I did find creative about that role was me finding the right people for the right job and appreciating other creatives.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that's part of my skill set, is to see something in someone. I don't a lot, whether it's through mentoring or whatever, it's seeing something and believing in them and supporting them. Like I'm all about that because I can spot a fraud a mile off. Vogue used to attract a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof. And had this really fabulous deputy. And I had my PA and my deputy, and they were both like really just ace women that just cut through all the shit, and I used to call them the tomb dogs because they wouldn't let any bullshit through.
Wow.
It just, we had big bullshit detectors, because a lot of people wanted to work at Vogue for what it could do for them as opposed to what they could do for the magazine, So I prided myself on getting really talented people who were there for the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vogue Australia was a different sort of scenario to, an Italian Vogue with Franca Sozzani or Anna Wintour was terribly powerful Vogue or whatever. Vogue Australia had occupied different part. But then I don't only define myself from being an ex-Vogue editor, because I haven't been at Vogue now for 12 years or something.
Yeah.
But the way I feel like I'm still connected to the industry is how much time I spend with young people and supporting them and encouraging them in a very fractured and terrible, weird market, but understanding that they had the same hopes, dreams and desires that I did.
Yeah.
And like, how can they channel that to have a meaningful career?
Yeah.
Because I understand what their impetus is. I get it. And fashion looks like it's exciting. It looks exciting, but how hard it is when you actually have to get in there and do the work. But, so I don't, to go back to my legacy, it is connection and communication and just supporting people, I think, kind of supporting and seeing creatives and bolstering them, I think, because the world's not designed for that. Creatives are the first things to get cut out on the spreadsheet.
Yes.
The first thing that McKinsey gets rid of. They're not. The creatives are not valued the way they should be. Even in a corporate organisation as well. They're the whole nuts and bolts. They're the goose that lays the golden egg. And they're always the first ones to be shafted on headcount.
Yeah.
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 That was, yeah.
It doesn't add up.
So creatives need to be nurtured and appreciated more than ever. And I don't mean just someone who, is banging on about painting. I mean people who've got creative solutions to things and creative sensitivities to how they approach things. And it's not, strictly I've got an art show happening, but I mean creative in the sense of anything they could be doing, but adding that sense of sensitivity and purpose to it.
Yeah. Like, what kind of advice do you find yourself giving them?
Sometimes you might have to separate your creative life from how you're making money. I mean, most of us have got a not trust fund kids, and, there has to be a medium there where this is done here and then there's your creative outlet. They're not necessarily all going to happen at the same time. It's the same way if people want to have a job that has purpose and maybe social purpose, and some sort of social justice
Yeah.
Maybe not everything can be done at the same time, but you can live a very interesting and varied and energetic life by tapping into all bits of that. You know, it's like when, young women used to say, can you have it all? You can define all.
Yeah.
Because can't it all happen at separate occasions? You don't necessarily need to be married, having children at your peak, at your best job, at your peak health. It's just it's a hard one a hard task to set yourself. Maybe they just come in, in increments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just froze my eggs in January because I had whiplash. I was like when you're in that climb and you're like, not literal whiplash.
No, I understand. But how old are you?
32.
Yeah, see, I was having this conversation with a young woman last night because all my young friends got that social media pressure at 32 to freeze their eggs. I'm like, now they're 39. I'm like, what are you getting now? They're like perimenopause.
Oh.
They're all targeting you.
Yeah, there's always something.
Oh, perimenopause. I'm like, I said to my friend, I know you have really heavy, but why are they targeting you?
Yeah, well.
Perimenopause is, they're 10 years they're about 10 years early, already giving you problems you don't, Anyway, yeah. I understand whiplash and freezing your eggs. I understand that because I'm sure that it feels like you have agency when you freeze your eggs. So you're like, that's done, tick. I don't have to. I get that.
It also was a choice
that.
for my boyfriend as well. I hadn't been in a long-term adult relationship like this in a while, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just with him at this age, going all in, because I was like, the father of my children, and like that. Yeah. I wanted to separate the two, and even the act of freezing my eggs and just the bed rest that you kind of need for that. Yeah. He was unbelievable, and I fell in love with him tenfold through that process.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I've been with two girls, gone to the the centre, medical centre with them and picked them up afterwards and had of course, and had tea and cake, because I get it, so that you're not making bad decisions because with the pressing time. But I also think we also need to be cognizant of what is being pushed on us by social media and making us feel that we, this is something we have to do. And but around fertility there are time pressures. But the perimenopause one's actually really giving me the shits. Yeah, that is so individual.
Yeah,
to start going at it because they're 38 years old. It's ridiculous.
So what is perimenopause in that sense?
Well, when you're starting to head towards menopause, but that is completely that's not related to. Fertility is a whole different thing. That it is completely individual. A doctor should talk about this more than me. But I just feel like that one's really heightened because they're like, okay, you froze your eggs. What else can we make you worry about?
Yeah. Seriously. What other insecurity can we capitalize
and what about them to do? Well, what's targeting me now? I don't know. Old age. Old age homes, probably.
Oh, my God.
No, I haven't. I don't know.
Mum's
chair Pilates. That's what I've been. I was like, come on, I can do my own Pilates. I don't need a chair Pilates.
Mum's getting cruises at the moment. She's excited about it.
Oh, yeah, I'm not anti-cruise.
I would fucking love that.
Cruises are fantastic.
I just want to unpack and then not have to unpack again.
Oh, it's
that
the
would
best.
Be so lush.
It's the best.
And they have high-speed internet now, so we can get a lot done.
No, they're great. You know what needs to happen? I've been doing a lot of them for my role, Bill, is that they've traditionally only been for older people. Not that there's anything wrong with older people, but I like the intergenerational ones and there's a lot of women traveling on their own now. I went on a fabulous cruise recently and there were 5 single women on the cruise. There's only 22 people, 22 guests, from 75 to 30, and they were fabulous women, because they're already adventurous because they're on the cruise. And you find your peeps for dinner and all that sort of stuff, and I think we're going to see more of that because it's a safe space for women to travel on their own. You can make new friends. It's really great. I had a 75-year-old kayaking buddy. She was fabulous. There was a fabulous girl from she ran Latin America, Spotify in Latin America.
Oh my God.
She was great.
One of my last questions that I have for you is about the people that feel like it's too late to start. Mm. I feel like you'll have a really feisty fuck off answer for that.
Yeah. I do, but I understand why people would think that. I understand why you do question yourself if you come up with an idea and you think, am I too old for that? Are people, it seems like such a young world. It seems like, if you went out job seeking that you would be overlooked. Australia is quite an ageist country, and even on boards and things like that, you start to realise, like, am I the oldest person on this board and what have you? So I get that. You just got to ask what the motivation is.
Yeah, like, what's it for?
What's it for? So if you're, if you want to start painting, that's what old age is supposed to be for, really. If you want to start doing something you've never tried before. I mean, this is something where we should be able to please ourselves. You've raised the family, or not. You've had that big corporate career, and you're kind of, taking your foot off the pedal a bit. Like, this is what it's for. To explore those chapters. So I guess I'd question the motivation. If you felt like you needed to do it to show people that you were still relevant, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. But if it feels right for you to do it because it's something that you're passionate about, or that it would make you happy. I even hate that word, passionate. If it would make you happy, then you should do it.
Why do you hate the word passionate?
Oh, I think so many people used to say to me, I have a passion for fashion. And I don't. Of course, it's never too late to start something. And we can pull up all sorts of examples of, people who started doing things later in life.
I love those little Instagram things that you get, and you're like, it's like, so-and-so started this business. Like the worst example is the Colonel from KFC. He started at like 67 or something.
Did he?
So old. That's why the picture of him is this old dude.
Yeah.
He killed it.
I reckon it'd be really hard. I don't know about starting a business at I guess so.
Why not?
Yeah, in my head, it goes to the more creative art. You know what I mean? Like if you were like, could you want to do a startup tomorrow of a bloody blah? I'd be like, I don't know. I just can't get onto those fluoro lights anymore and have the meetings, and no. There, I could say to you, I'm too old for that, because I'm almost too old for another opinion now. Like, I just don't want to. I don't want consensus or.
Wow.
My way or the highway.
Fair enough.
Not on a board, of course, but on an, sort of private enterprise. No. Because that's feisty enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I'm in Aries. And
same. When's your birthday?
23rd of March.
Oh, yeah. 9th of April.
Not yet. Yeah, you're a true Aries.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Thank you. You too, when it comes. It's our way or the highway, really, was it? Because I learned that very early on at Vogue when I was, for a point in time, I was a fashion assistant, and then I just realised I just hated being an assistant. I was like, I'll go and be a journalist because I just don't want to. I don't want to assist.
Fair enough. Not for you.
And it was the wrong motivation. I was being an assistant because I wanted to go on the trips, but I didn't really want to assist.
Okay.
Maybe go be a journo, which was a much better option for me.
With your creative energy, is there something that you really want to do that you think you'll never actually get to doing?
I would imagine it's this book, this novel that I keep going on about, and I really feel I should give it a go. You don't want to die not knowing, do you? So no. I should give it. And weirdly, I've got an agent was interested in it, so I don't know what has been stopping me.
Is it that question of what does anyone need this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, is it a novella? Is that what you said?
It'll be a novel. It was a crime novel, actually.
I think I want to read it because.
Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'd like to get off TikTok.
Oh, yeah. I should back myself, It's because I get those loves, as I say to you, I've got these lovely women who are really smarter than me, women that are running huge companies, whatever, who come up and go, oh, you're going to write another book? Oh, I'd love another one. And I'm like.
We would love another one.
Okay, should I? Okay, I'll do it. I'm going away tomorrow, and I thought, I've got 3 days by the beach on my own. I'm like, maybe I should just go for it.
100%.
I have to revise the chapter because I wrote it in the third person, not knowing who the protagonist is, and now I realise it's me, so I've got to go back and write it in the first person.
Oh, okay. So what is the process of writing a book for you? Do you just start and then it makes itself, or are you like, there's cue cards everywhere and it's all very mapped?
I've started, but I'll finish these 2 chapters. Then if I get a green light, then I'll go back and I'll probably start mapping out some characters and things, but I don't know who. Actually, I wrote this character. It was a friend of mine who works in PR, and I called her and I said, you're in my book. And I said, I've written this character really close to her. And she's like, that's exciting. Wow. And I was like, you're probably going to get murdered. She was like, okay, great.
Kill her off. Fuck it.
Yeah. I haven't quite worked out who's the murderer and who's going to get murdered yet, but I think that'll come as you write. It'll make sense. It'll start to make sense.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
It's
daunting though. But
do you feel like you get, when you have a holiday booked, where are you going?
Oh, I'm going up to Halcyon House.
Divine.
Yeah, I haven't been.
Do you feel like if you choose to do something with your time while you're on holiday like that, you're actually robbing yourself of relaxing because you just go so all in?
No, I'm pretty relaxed.
Okay,
I don't have the full. I mean, I'm not stressed.
Okay.
If I had to fill out a questionnaire, I'd be right down the bottom.
Okay.
I was stressed because I don't have a corporate job.
Yeah.
I have the most wonderful editor at Bell, who I just send in my work.
Yeah.
I don't have to go into the office. Like, I don't have any stress, really.
This is amazing.
I made that happen.
Yeah.
She's awesome. But I made my life not have any of those stresses.
Yeah, wow.
I still do yoga and could wake up when I want. And
you have an incredible ability of making time for people. And even the way that you mentor and all of that, even the way that you've made time for me over the years is very generous. And I just love it so much.
But I feel for there was this lovely young woman. She sent me an email to ask for career advice. She went through my email on my website. She went through LinkedIn. She went through the DM on Insta. She found every way in, and I just thought she was in Perth. And I'm like, go you know, for your initiative. What is it going to kill me to spend 20 minutes on Zoom with her to chat about what she wants, her hopes and dreams and aspirations. And we had a 20-minute Zoom call and not to sound too, lofty about it, but I had such a wonderful career and opportunity and all that stuff that I had in my mag days. And I kind of do feel like you should pay it back to young people who are chomping at the bit to do stuff. And, it isn't that wide open field that we had when there were 10 magazines or what have you.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like you should. They deserve your 20 minutes.
Is there something that you find that women are struggling with the most?
People think they have to be good at everything, because everything's so demanding in a job. It's because it's of the digital world and it's all 24/7 or whatever, and they kind of have to be good at everything and they haven't got the space to drill down into one thing, I want to be a florist or I want to be a ceramicist or I want to be a blah. They're kind of I think they're addled. Their brains are addled a bit. Yeah, and I think with TikTok and all that sort of stuff, that everybody just seems to be a bit like, blah, overwhelmed.
Yeah,
and then add to as they get older, the issues that you're talking about with family and babies and when do you slot those times in and the cost of living and all that. There's a lot of that as well. This kind of quest for perfection that is everywhere, and then it's not only in working life and all image, it's also of course physical. And on times of all the injectables and the blah and the nail and the hair and the mark and the Ozempic and the blah and the tea parties and and this absolute quest for. And if I could say to any of them, it's like, just be easy on yourself. Just try and be nice. The people, you need to be your own friend. There'll be enough. You're going to get criticism from enough people. You don't need to self-criticize. I mean, you need to be self-aware, but people are so. I feel young women are so self-critical, and you just want to look at them and go, look at you, beaming, you're beautiful. Like what? And they just. I feel, they're just being attached to be told they're not good enough. Yeah. I think there's a lot of that.
In the middle of stewing on how to entertain the women that listen to Process for winter, because an enormous amount of us are not going overseas and are battening down the hatches and are a little bit nervous about winter and like what that will bring, just because it's kind of more lonely. It's a little bit more boring. What do you do? Are you just on TikTok all the time? Like, what do you kind of do with your time in winter? So I want to do, some podcasts do like deep dives and that kind of thing. And they really take you through, for example, like an individual, like Sofia Coppola's filmography or somebody like that, or how Miu Miu started or something like that, that actually has so much weight and interest to do the 10,000 hours, but choosing things that then also have extracurricular activities. Like, guys, if you're following along with the Sofia Coppola like deep dive, this week we're watching Lost in Translation, and it kind of gives you this purpose to be like enriched in culture without even really having to spend or leave the house or like that. I just want the cozy girls to have this like moment of culture, because I find there's a lot of like fashion and kind of culture podcasts that are out. They're not doing that research. They're not there kind of figuring those pieces out. Everybody has that beautiful Sofia Coppola coffee table book, but no one fucking read it. I want to read it and I want to figure it out and be like, oh, wow, that actually, the reason she wrote that is because of this. And I just think it informs creativity so well when you have backstory.
We were talking about this earlier in this conversation. It's about having that knowledge bank.
Yeah.
That, you know, because so much of podcasting is just chit chat with people that are like friends. But it's like I only want to hear from experts, really. I only want to hear from experts or comedians, but not much in between. Do you know? Everybody, I mean, I'm sure everyone's got an opinion. God, didn't I know it at Vogue? But one thing I always say to the students too, it's like, particularly if they're TikTok raised. Yeah. It's like you say, who are you following? And they look at you blankly because they're not following anyone. They're being followed. Yeah. And if you're not making a conscious decision to follow something or to read something or whatever, then you're in a whole other area of knowledge. And I read this really good quote, and I don't know who said it. Was like, if you're not paying for a product, you are the product.
Wow.
I was like, oh. But, you know, like paying for mastheads and things like that. If you're not paying for the New York Times, or you're not paying for the Sydney Morning Herald, or you're not paying for Vogue Runway app, you know, and you're just getting it from TikTok.
It's scary that you think that you're making a decision to open that up, but it's not.
No, you're not. And they don't, because I'm like, where do you get your fashion tips? And they look at me, when are you, I don't know, it's just, and it found you. But there's all this really amazing stuff out there that you have to find. Yeah. It won't find you. That's not how the algorithm works. You know, it's not. It's who's paying to play and how many sponsored posts you're getting, and it's not how it works. You'd be much better off left in the library, you know. Yeah, absolutely. So that's sort of where I want to try and break through a little bit and just have a sort of educate, because I also want to learn that. And it'll be fun to learn it too. Like so many of the photographers that I've had on the podcast were really heavily influenced by like the Virgin Suicide's femininity and that youth that came. And then you can directly see that the photographers and stuff that came from the Rush kind of Stevie Dance era, inspired by that like flouncy femininity, but really raw, no makeup, that girly girl, but the grit of bare feet on the dirt sort of a thing. And that it's just so interesting to realize that we're wrapped around this, and I'm working in that space, but I'm not taking those steps, as you said, to do my 10,000 hours and find out where did that actually come from. Do you go back further from there to, you know, Deborah Turbeville? And do you know Deborah Turbeville? No, which is silly. When she does all those girls in Barthold, and then you go to people who, but he's been discredited, but David Hamilton, who did all those 13-year-old girls in dresses, but it got it. Yeah. Now in retrospect, when people, it was a bit weird. Okay. It crossed a line. I want to do like Bill Henson, but was he weird, or is that still art? No, I think, it's definitely Bill Henson. Yeah. I mean, there was those big issues when the certain organisation went after him, but I think Bill had real relationships with his subjects, and it wasn't predatory. No. Okay. No. Different one, but David Hamilton was like prepubescent girls, and it was naughty. If you go back to the David, do you know him? If you go back and reference that, he's largely been discredited now, but it was huge in the 70s. Maybe you need to be a contributor on this. And then if we go back before then, but Deborah Turbeville, well, that was a female gaze, so that was different, but this was much more of a pervy male. Yeah. But nobody, that was, you know, quite the thing in the 70s. And it would have inspired a lot of photographers, actually. Yeah, definitely. And we're like operating in this space of being inspired by this and this and this. And they're setting the tone for marketing as we know it right now. But nobody's doing that work to figure out where it actually came from. No. I want to do it. Yeah, do that work. Because, I mean, so many people would reference Stephen Meisel, but Stephen Meisel was always referencing someone else. Yes. Like he's, you know, so it was so great about American Vogue and that kind of what their archive must, you know, look like. They always back things up with the whole tendril of history and fashion. Yeah. So there's like people like John Galliano and what have you. No, it's not just a dress. It goes right down here, and he's worked with his hair and makeup and his milliner like Stephen Jones, genius. You know, those kind of people who pull all that history out of things. That I hate to think we're going to lose that, and it's just going to be, you know, cheap marketing stunts plugged into the entertainment industry, which it currently is a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how do we keep that alive?
Well, you need to appreciate and watch it. Like that John Galliano, Martin Margiela video show that was staged last year in Paris. Remember, it broke the internet with that porcelain doll makeup and what have you. And I think, you'd see a lot of people did a deep dive then to it was so arresting. And then I've been talking to the students about, like, do you know Baldini? Do you know Brassai and Brassai's Paris? And so what
class are you teaching? I want to come.
It was it was fashion journalism and multimedia, and we just sat there and watched it for 32 minutes while I threw in what I knew about stuff, like, oh, look at that, whatever. Look at that. Toile, or look at that,
that's insane.
Whatever, because nobody sits for 32 minutes
and
watches.
Like,
and it was only those lucky people that were in Paris that got to see it, and it was like, you can sit for 32 minutes and look at this beautiful thing. I'm not here to solve the tertiary education system, but
we spoke so much about who is inspiring the photographers of right now. Who is inspiring you right now?
I think what's inspiring me is what's always inspired me, but I'm traveling. I travel a lot now, and because I can, and I also spend a lot of time with young people, and my sons do. My sons are both in that space. One of them's a film editor, and the other one is the lead thinker at an ad agency. And so I have really great conversations with the younger people, combining that with travel. What inspires me is my freedom.
Yeah, wow. Do you document your travels and stuff? Yeah. Are you a journaler?
No, because normally it's commission and I've got to write the piece anyway for a magazine.
Just your thoughts in general?
No, I don't journal. No. Maybe I should. Maybe that's a late life pastime, Arielle, that I should take up.
I just feel like you've got such an incredible wealth of knowledge. How are you not being like, yeah, obviously, give me that face. How are you not getting it out?
Yeah, I know. Don't know. It's like a therapy session. Couch here. I gotta write that book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just love talking to you.
Thank you. It was lovely to do. It's really nice to explore inside your own head.
Well, I think you're brilliant.
Oh, thanks.
And I can't wait to read the novel.
And I'm
I can't wait to see who gets murdered.
I know. Yeah.
Have you got a name yet?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't. I think of a name every day. A book. Like, somebody will say something and I think that's a great name for a novel. That's a great name for a novel. But no, I'm going to do it. I pitched it to this agent like 2.5 years ago, and she's like, I'll take it. Great. Just do it. And
it's been 2.5 years since rattling around in you?
Yeah. I haven't done it.
My.
No.
Okay. Halcyon House, here we come. You got to get that done.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least a little nudge.
Yeah.
A peruse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
That brings me to the end of this week's episode. If you loved it, I'd love to ask you a favor. Could you please share it with a friend, subscribe to this channel, like it on socials, or leave us a review, any of the above that feels right or easiest for you. We are still a baby podcast trying to make our way in the world, and we need all the love that we can get. I'll see you next Sunday.